Okay, well, it was about this time that Mark Chamberlain would gather the troops and circle the wagons. But Mark isn't here with us physically this evening. He has moved on. So I guess it's up to me, which is a scary thought. I mean, when you're counting on me to gather the troops and circle the wagons, you know that leadership is even worse than we thought it was. But this show this art collection was a dream of Mark's because it was my mother, Betty Turnbull, whose collection this is, who was the curator of collections and exhibitions at the Newport Harbor Art Museum. And in 1979, she gave Mark his first museum recognition as a photographer. And Mark was always very grateful to her. And we had talked about putting up this collection in BC Space a while ago. And it was something he was very excited about. And then, of course, he went into the hospital. And he was still excited about it. But that was Mark. I mean, he was excited. I saw him 2 days before he graduated. And he was still excited. Convinced he was going to get out of there. He just didn't realize he was going to get out of there through the door that he did. But he is here in spirit. His spirit does indeed live on in Laguna and beyond. Because get that, would you? They used to say, "Hey, I can't do everything around here."
It's Mark.
It is Mark. Yeah. So, it's probably my parole officer. So, here's to Mark and to carrying on his legacy.
Yes.
Yeah, because he... because he truly did achieve what he set out to do, which was the potent cocktail of art and activism put together. And we owe him, the town of Laguna owes him a great deal of thanks. Time goes quickly as it will, whilst that box went faster still. Yesterday on Cardboard Hill. There always seems to be a hill in childhood. And there was a hill where I grew up in Newport Beach, California, a high hill from the crest of which you could look out and see everything. What my dad used to call the whole shooting match. Crisp white sails gliding across a bright blue bay. Wheeling gulls gliding across bright blue sky. The two blues always seem to have something to do with one another. Across the bay, the pavilion, the old pavilion, which sat next to the fun zone, with its slowly whirling Ferris wheel, like tourists on a spit. The little ferry boats, 3 cars each, shuttling from island to peninsula, escorted by the seals, whose barking at night you couldn't tell from the foghorns. And the Newport guidebooks called this hill the Castaways, But my friends, thanks to a corrugated sporting event that this friendly hill gave rise to, had christened it with a different name. Come drag a box up Cardboard Hill. Now pound it flat, then flatter still. The slightest bump can mean a spill can mean a Dr. Bill when you come screaming down that hill. Only a 10 or 12 yard ride, what seemed an alpine mountainside. The trick was leaning back to glide. Once I fell forward, terrified, bashed my head, crushed my pride. Get John Gamble, Sally Storch, go drag Libet off her porch. Kent, I bet you can't beat me there. Go tell Pete and Gary Hill, we will meet there on the hill. Jan and Julie ought to be there. I found a refrigerator box, an outdoor carton by the docks, an outboard carton by the docks. And there's a market on the island that just threw out a pile, and they're tough enough for rocks. No sunset surfer ever sped like boy on box, no ski nor sled. Crossed the bay, the old fun zone had no roller coaster, so on Cardboard Hill we made our own. Tall eucalyptus and short pine, in groves above grass worn so fine, you could hear the cardboard whine like some magic carpet flying that planed and made the soil shine. The crest was called the Castaways, where now I gaze on yesterday's. Time flies quickly as it will, once that box flew faster still. Yesterday on Cardboard Hill, times change quickly as they will, once I left them standing still in my dust on Cardboard Hill. Come drag a box of Cardboard Hill. And those names have not been changed because we were all innocent. And this is the innocence that we want to get back to, isn't it? Charles Baudelaire said that genius is childhood recalled at will. Pablo Picasso was once accosted at an art exhibition by an irate woman who sneered at him. "Sir, any child could have done these paintings." To which the great artist replied, "Well, yes, madam, but very few adults." And down the hill, across the bay, on the Balboa Peninsula, bobbing at docks in front of the pavilion, were the pleasure boats, bursting with sightseers. These were chartered affairs, large-decked and open-aired, that would slowly make their way around the harbor while a pontificating captain would point out various sites, points of interest. And there was a tradition. It was a prank that we would do every 3 or 4 years. You couldn't do it too often. The authorities would get wise. My mischievous friends and I would swimsuited buy our tickets for one of these cruises, you see, and climb aboard, sort of nervously make our way over to a seat, sit down, and wait in the mounting anticipation as the boat wended its way around the harbor with the captain with his microphone pointing out, this site and that, James Cagney's house, John Wayne's house, Shark Island, this large uninhabited landmass where a famous war movie had been filmed. More about Shark Island later. And finally, as the boat was making its way back to the pavilion, when it swung around near our home beach, we merry pranksters, on signal from our leader, would all arms and legs and screaming leap overboard into the water below and swim ashore laughing while the tourists just gasped in alarm and disbelief. And the poor put-upon skipper would mutter something about irresponsible youth, hoping it wouldn't be picked up by the microphone. A little memory. Yeah. And the art that you see tonight, as you know, was collected by my mom, and she was mentored in the art Dodge by my godfather, who was a world-class art collector, the shaggy-haired, cashmere-voiced actor Sterling Holloway, probably best known for his narration of Walt Disney's Peter and the Wolf. And then a few years later, again for Disney, the voice of Winnie the Pooh. And Sterling, in 1965, co-starred in a TV show called The Baileys of Balboa. And the Baileys shot the exteriors. All the exteriors were down in Newport Harbor, in the kind of the environs which I've been describing. But the exteriors were done on a soundstage up in Hollywood. And Sterling told me that when they would shoot up there, there was a crew, a cast from a new nautically themed TV show that would come over to watch the Baileys shoot, and they would complain secretly about this turkey that they had signed on to. And oh, didn't they wish that they could have a quality show like the Baileys of Balboa. So I asked him, well, do you know any of these regretful actors? And he said, oh yeah, old friends, Jim Backus, Alan Hale. Well, Baileys ran barely a season. The Gilligan's Island is still going. So you never know. Okay, let's get in the water. A sabot is a snub-nosed, 8-foot-long sailboat. It's a one-person operation, but when the mast and the sail are removed, it fits 2 11-year-old boys perfectly. Mount 2 shiny brass oarlocks on the gunnels, and adventure awaits. Heave-ho, boys, the boats, clap oars in their oarlocks, shove off till she floats, leap in and spin round, the slap and the splash, how sweetly the oar talks. The boys in their sabots are Shark Island bound. Across the blue bay, the sun sparkled water, this mountain of clay, all tumbleweed crowd, so boys haul away. Here comes the armada, the salt spray is blowing, we're rowing and Shark Island bound. soldiering bands, an island to play on, toy guns in our hands, our mouths make the sound, a high sandy dune, like Macduff we lay on, or the battle they filmed here when gunners were slain by John Wayne. 1949, the sands of Iwo Jima, cross shell-crusted sand, dry tangles of ice plants, boys' dark summer tanned, are gaining high ground. The Rangers' command has captured the prize canteen. See the victory shouts, see the sand sharks swim round. Where boys used to play, this place we could spot ships, or ice planted clay. That era has drowned the sea sharky today, all mansions and yacht slips. No more boys in sabots are Shark Island bound. Somewhere in the spray, my schoolboy armada, mates fore and aft, commanding their craft, still Shark Island bound. The boys fore and aft shouted and laughed, Shark Island bound. Playground would soon be one of the most expensive plots of real estate on the planet. Thank you. Many creative types left the bustle of Los Angeles to come down and make their home by the water. I'm told it was on a bright, sunny day that the very famous orchestrator, composer Henry Mancini was sailing Newport Harbor in his yacht when he crossed wakes with them. Another famous orchestrator, composer David Rose, who happened to be sailing on his very expensive yacht. And when the two musicians got within earshot of one another, Mancini opens his arms to the beauty of the day and shouts out across the water, "Aren't you glad we practiced?" And around the bay are islands. Shark Island, of course, which once the developers interceded became Linda Isle. Collins Island. In 1908, the famous Polish immigrant and actress, the majestic Madame Modjeska, moved to Bay Island. I recall my teenage surf band playing a house party on Balboa Island, at the home of that wily Beverly hillbilly, Buddy Ebsen. But my interest lay across the channel, on Lido Island, where lived the legendary songwriter Johnny Mercer. And around the corner from him, his neighbor, was the recipient of the very first Grammy ever awarded to the producer of a jazz record, Peggy Lee's iconic recording of Fever, Mr. Jack Marshall. And Jack was a superb musician, another wonderful orchestrator and composer, and a great guitarist. He was a true guitar enthusiast, a missionary of the guitar, really. The Marshall household vibrated with music. By the bay where sea scouts rode, there's a house musicians know, where the great guitarists go. Guitar House, Bach or basing, Broadway show, strum shine on the patio, midnight low, the stereo. Guitar House, Telecaster on the chair, vintage Martin leaning there, that Ramirez very rare. Guitar House, beat piano scores in stacks, records lined in record racks, Mother Eve's and Papa Jack's. Guitar House. Now I got to know Jack and Eve Marshall through my high school buddy, their son, Frank, another guitar enthusiast. Although since then, Frank has become a bit of a movie producer, producing, among other things, all the Indiana Jones movies, all the Jason Bourne spy thrillers, Back to the Future, The Sixth Sense, Sully, Jurassic World. One of these days, he's going to make it. I keep telling him, Frank, hang in. Some went surfing, some the pool. My friends gathered after school in this home so warm, so cool. Guitar House, laughter like to beat the band, while we strove to gain command of my poor misled right hand. Guitar House. Once, to my astonished gaze, Jack showed me 100 ways to harmonize that middle phrase. In Jerome Kern's Yesterdays, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, play that cow boogie lick. Mother Eve got such a kick. Guitar House. Jack was always working on something. A TV theme, The Munsters was his. A comedy record with jazz's wild man, Jack Sheldon. An orchestration, a string quartet, a guitar transcription. And when that mind of his wasn't blazing away, he relaxed. Once, when Jack had been up drinking, I sat playing on my own. Jack rang up the greatest sideman and had me play over the phone. Bossa Nova came along with its soft and subtle song. It was perfect for the throng. And Guitar House played on classical guitars. Here Joe Beam and Joao were stars, with no picks or amplifiers. Flesh on string, here samba swing, sing gently all through Guitar House. We, her devotees, all felt it, our house. Howard Roberts hones his tone, while Jack gossips on the phone with Chris Harkening, well known at Guitar House. Roberts was probably the most knowledgeable of all the jazz guitarists. Very often when one of the greats had a gig in LA, they would stay over an extra day to take a lesson from Howard. And one time when I thought I was playing on my own, sitting in the living room, much to my surprise, out of the kitchen ambles Howard, who sat down and showed me a 13th chord that I had been struggling to find in that old chestnut, Darn That Dream, which I had turned into a tribute to the great British classical guitarist, Julian Bream. Darn that Bream, he plays so well. He makes me feel as though I sound like hell. Playing pluck on stringed peanut shell. Oh, darn that Bream. The sort of thing one does when you're 16 years old. Now, Christopher Parkening is, one would think, America's greatest contribution to the classical guitar, and as fate would have it, Jack's nephew. So it was Uncle Jack who brought a teenage Chris Parkening to the attention of the man who would become his teacher and mentor, the Colossus, Andres Segovia. There's a bridge across Newport Bay, leading on Toledo way. Walk the beach to yesterday. Guitar House, where the Grammy Jack had won, rested casually upon fireplace hearth. Oh, where's it gone? Now each day, days disappear like the snows of yesteryear. But in my ear, I'll always hear Guitar House, where true mentors played their roles, helping youth define its goals, sharing sounds that shaped our souls. Guitar House. To my astonished gaze, Jack showed me 100 ways to harmonize that middle phrase in Jerome Kern's Yesterdays. This was the phrase. A 100 different ways. But Jack was not my guitar teacher. That was a very wise and laid-back gentleman named Baz Hutchinson. And Baz and his wife Helen, a great singer, and their 10 kids lived down right on the beach in Newport. So sand was a constant for my weekly guitar lesson, which I did for 5 years. Yeah. And Baz and Helen, were very good friends with the fellow I mentioned earlier, the legendary lyricist Johnny Mercer. Although Helen always called him John. A native of Georgia, Savannah. And there he was, living right across that across the bridge in Newport Bay leading on Toledo Way. Moon River, accentuate the positive, too marvelous for words. Summer wind, autumn leaves. What else? The list goes on and on. Dream when you're feeling blue. And of course, one for my baby and one more for the road. It's 2:45, and Helen, look who just walked in. Savannah in a gap-toothed grin, Hawaiian shirt and straw hat, sandals cross the doormat. He knows just where he'll find the gin. Our huckleberry friend, good evening, Mr. Finn. A Harlem-flavored southern drawl. When he says y'all, he means us all. Georgia's native son dreams in California sunbeams. A summer wind keeps him in thrall. When autumn leaves begin to fall. Dream when you're feeling blue. Then double-click your cursor on Best Popular Verser. If your engine's slow, it may take a mo, but you'll find it's a Mr. Mercer. Now Georgia sometimes picks a fight, sky higher than a painted kite. When the days of wine expose his demons, he sends roses. He knows when he's been impolite, and he always tries to set things right. Dream when you're feeling blue. The record labels show it, song title and just below it, the author's name who I proclaim the first jukebox poet. There's Georgia across the bridge tonight. The perfect word would cinch things tight. I'm stumped, I'm licked, there's not one. But Mr. Mercer's got one that sings like southern cranes in flight, that lift and flap and wing from side. I never got to know him, but Helen showed me his Christmas poem. His lexicon was pure delight. If you stand upon that ridge, stick your head out just a smidge, you'll hear Georgia cross that bridge tonight. The starry song of April, the moon's river drape will spill a path of purest light. When Georgia crossed that bridge last night. Good evening, Mr. Finn, and thank you. there'll be an exam later on to see how many of those lyrics I referenced, how many were noticed. One that I didn't reference was Jeepers Creepers, which I will use now to illustrate the sort of thing that I learned week in, week out, down on 36th Street from Baz Hutchinson. This is the sort of thing we did. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, in Old Newport, in fact, along the entire coast, the guitar flourished, all styles. Jazz, classical, flamenco. In fact, I took some flamenco lessons for a little while, but it was a great little spot. It was in a garret by the cannery down at the water. But I just couldn't, the flamenco rhythms eluded me. Right? And finally my teacher said, "Mark, you're just from the wrong part of Europe." But flamenco was popular, rock and roll, surf music especially. And of course the guitar loomed very large in those dimly lit bohemian palaces of culture to which I was so irresistibly drawn, the folk music clubs. And Newport played host to a charmer. Just down the beach from the Rendezvous Ballroom, where Dick Dale, the king of the surf guitar, held forth, at the foot of the Balboa Pier, there was nestled a tiny, dark den with an even tinier stage and a very loud espresso machine. It's called the Prison of Socrates. And then 7 miles north, as the dolphin frolics, in Huntington Beach, across from the pier where they hold the famous surfing contest, there was an extraordinary anti-establishment establishment called the Golden Bear, where I heard, I got to hear and see some of the greatest names in folk music. There were places in my youth, realms of beauty, rooms of truth, where no two chairs or tables looked the same, and men who seemed very old to us, and the stories that they told to us were honored in their person and by name. Women who had suffered much and sung their way out of sorrow's clutch shone with a spirit that put mere fame to shame. Hellhounds barked down darkened trails. Shotguns bled rock salt and nails. Ships claimed loyal cabin boys. In fact, I was one. We heard of Polly, who was pretty, and gates, 12 to the city, a moon of Odin, a house of the rising sun. But these tales, their magic spelling, was in the presence, the living telling. Far beyond the gates, the trails, the full set sails, the nails, and rock salt in the gun. Ramblin' Jack Elliott, Buffy St. Marie, Hetty West, Ian and Sylvia, the New Lost City Ramblers, the Greenbrier Boys, Son House, Sanitarian, Brownie McGee, the Reverend Gary Davis, Barbara Dane, Muddy Waters, the Dillards, the Stoneman family, Phil Oakes. And night after night, now I was only 15 years old at this point, mind you. Night after night, I would tell my parents I was going to bed and then silently sneak out of my house, like Tom and the Huck, sneaking off to the graveyard at midnight to cure their warts with a dead cat. And I would sneak out of the house and hitchhike. When I think, it used to be don't tell my folks. Eventually it became don't tell my kids. I would hitchhike up the Pacific Coast Highway. The sound of the surf, the stench of the seaweed, the chill of Pacific fog. I remember this so well. To hear my future as reflected in our past. Banjo players from Kentucky, early jazz pickers from Reno and Truckee. What was her name in the Victorian dress and cowboy boots sang Jelly Roll Morton's Sweet Substitute. Delta blues from Mississippi, and a look later labeled hippie on the Amerindian singer with the raven hair and the wooden flute. Pale pallid country fiddlers in string tie and vest. Cowboy singers come yodeling out the west. Gospel shouted from a Wurlitzer keyboard. Piedmont rag from the eastern seaboard. Ooh, 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 ooh. And youthful Drang und Strum sought to ape, absorb, become this heritage, and some did it well. Sometimes cowered by this reality, we were empowered by this reality. The songs they'd sing the stories they would tell. For here was design for living, sacred wisdom, the true thanksgiving, where a nation and its history rose shining from the mist as we stared into their eyes like some ancient whale, reflecting all the stories they would tell. Some very simple stage lights poured sweat down the faces of these great, great artists who treated this 15-year-old boy like an equal and from whom I got a great deal of my education. And what I was learning from all this traditional and tradition-based music was the grafting of life to art, the weaving of song from strands of personal experience. And their singing goes on ringing in my blood like water springing from the earth, the source, the birth, this ancient well. The songs they'd sing, the stories they would tell. Ooh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Ooh, ooh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Piedmont Rag from the Eastern Seaboard with Reverend Gary Davis was a blind street singer and preacher from Durham, North Carolina. He had a cannon of a voice, and he was the greatest of the folk guitar players. It sounded like a piano when he played. He was the embodiment of Piedmont Rag. And for one weekend, when I was 16 years old, I got to be lead boy for the Reverend Gary Davis. Now, what the lead boy does traditionally for the blind singer is to accompany him through the streets, make sure nobody takes his tin cup or put anything foreign in it, carries his guitar. He's a caddy. It's a noble tradition. The wonderful folk singer Josh White was the lead boy for the great blind Lemon Jefferson down in Texas for a while. And for one weekend, I, in my own small way, had the honor, the privilege of being the lead boy for the Reverend Gary Davis. And I would bring him up on stage with two guitars, his warm-up guitar and his specialty guitar, which stayed at the back of the stage until the time was right. And I would set him in front of the microphones with his warm-up guitar, and he would talk to the people for a bit. And then he would say, "Boy, take my cigar!" And I'd run up on stage and take this awful, soppy thing that, I mean, it was a tobacco sponge. It was like he'd been chewing on it for weeks. So I'd take it and I wheeled it back down the stairs. And then he would play a few songs on his warm-up guitar. And then would come the moment of truth. And he'd say, "Boy, where's Miss Gibson? Bring me Miss Gibson." And I would come back up on stage, take the warm-up guitar out of his hands, go to the back of the stage, take this big, beautiful Gibson Hummingbird guitar, Reverend Gary Davis's very famous Miss Gibson, and I would set it in his lap, and he would play that ragtime guitar, Piedmont Rag, which sounds like this. Ah! I got baggage. I got too much stuff. I got baggage. I got way too much of this baggage. Too much baggage for me. I got baggage. Yeah, it's hanging out, all this baggage. I don't want to think about this baggage. Too much baggage for me. I got baggage in the daytime, I got baggage at night, I got baggage in the shadows, I got baggage in the light, I got baggage in the alleyways, baggage all my days. I got baggage, too much baggage for me. Baggage, so much so I'd forgotten where I wanted to go. Now that is baggage, too much baggage for me. I got baggage, it is such a pain, so much baggage, couldn't get off the train. Now that is baggage. I got the special telegram, the conductor came round, he peeked into my sleeping car, only baggage could be found. I got baggage, I got too much stuff, I got baggage, I got way too much of this baggage, too much baggage for me. I got baggage, too much baggage for me. Many a night, many a fortunately uneventful hitchhiked ride. Well, let me drive us home now, in my own car, a little Nash Rambler. It's a whole new world when one acquires an automobile of one's own. And I was 17 now, tobogganing down Cardboard Hill, and Sabbats coming ashore at Shark Island to seem child's play when there's a tank full of gas and a road that leads, as the Beatles sang at about this time, here, there, and everywhere. Didn't I love my Sunday afternoons all on my own? This rainy afternoon, the joy of being young. Where shall I go this rainy afternoon? Gas in the tank this autumn afternoon. Perhaps I'll cruise the coast till June. The art museum installed some new works. I'd like to see some, and those fine art clerks. Didn't I love those girls in their berets, and all those gorgeous rainy days? Pelicans on the pier perch gently dream, blessing these wedded waters fresh and soft. Rivulets down the pilings, crystal streaming, fishermen in the mist, cloaked and soaked and pissed. Ferry boat rides on Sundays in the rain, gamboling seals and seagulls entertain the world, and I so young. Ferris wheel dripping silent in the gray, ferry boat tipping, splashing across the bay. We dock, I launch my car away. But on this high bank, low tide, my face red, can't climb the gangplank, my tires have no tread. Even Rumpelstiltskin, in his bliss, never saw spinning wheels like this. Didn't that crew jump to and push? Didn't the crowd appear and cheer? Memories like 1,000 Shakespeare plays of all those gorgeous rainy days. Wait, do I hear school bells? Didn't I love my Sunday afternoon? Time goes quickly as it will. Once that box went faster still. Yesterday on Cardboard Hill. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming on this journey with me back to a time that exists no more, but a joy that will live forever. So, let us drag that imaginary box up Cardboard Hill. Remember, it's only a 12 or 10 yard, only a 10 or 12 yard ride. What seemed an alpine mountainside. Perhaps I'll see you in the weeks to come. There are 4 more of these. Each one different. Next week is the old family. I climb up my family tree. It's a crazy bunch of people. So perhaps we'll meet again. Thank you. All right, you don't have to say. They're doing great.
I know.
They are doing great. Okay, I will leave you here with a mystery. We'll go back to the harbor, and I'll leave you with a little mystery. The song reminds me of Sterling Holloway in a way. There's something Disney-esque about it. But there's also something of my grandmother in it. One of my grandmothers. Because one of my grandmothers was a trash-talking, booze-swilling jazz hound. My other grandmother was a minister. But we'll get into all that next week. In the pretty little harbor, underneath a blue yet cloud-banked sky, where gulls and pelicans on high patrol, there floats a weather-beaten vessel, sail patched and threadbare, mast atilt, whose hull is barnacled and smudged with oil. And yet this cockeyed little shipwreck, leaking like a fishnet cast adrift, transports a treasure that no map could hold, nor can be sold. So from this picture-perfect harbor bobs the mighty vessel out to sea, due north, and hiding in its fragile hold something worth much more than gold, more than even might be told. Out to sea, please run and tell the little children so. Let the little children know. Due north, and hiding in its fragile hold something worth much more than gold, more than even might be told. Out to sea, please run and tell the little children so. Let their children's children know.
And 4 more to go. Amazing. Were you here for That was terrible place. There's a history of some really interesting stuff there. I forgot all about President Socrates. And I like